Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen and hunters alike. Zyder here, and today I've got for you a bit of a crash course on Chalice dungeons. Now, I suppose to anyone who has played Bloodborne, Chalice dungeons are going to be simple, but, pardon me, I feel as if it's always handy to sort of give a overview as to how they work. So, dungeons themselves come in two varieties. You have a normal dungeon and a root dungeon. A normal dungeon is predefined with bosses, loot and items in set locations, so you can run these to farm these. And roots are completely randomised. Enemies, bosses, loot, layout. All random, all completely different. Now a quick side note, this is a fetid central labyrinth. I'll talk about those in a moment. But basically they're your two categories of dungeons. They're either normal or rooted. Rooted being random, normal being preset. And then you've got your categories, so you've got the Thumerus, Hintertomb, Ailing Loran and Itch, or Is. And basically they go up in difficulty and difference in enemy types. And the basic thing is, to start a dungeon you're going to need, I think, three things. You're going to need the chalice itself, so the first chalice you'll get I think is just literally called a Thumeru chalice. Or the upper Thumeru chalice. B, you're going to need enough blood echoes to complete the ritual. And C, you're going to need the ritual prerequisites. Now for your first ritual it's going to be ritual blood and probably a tomb fungus or tomb moss or whatever it's called. But as the chalices get more difficult, the requirements get more steep. So sort of, I suppose you can sort of stagger. Obviously its chalice is going to have things like, it's going to be Bastards of Loran, red jelly, sage wrist, and so on and so forth. Now another sort of objective is that you can make offerings in these. Now these only come on later stages, so you can make them fetid, rotting, cursed. Now each of these requires additional ritual materials, so fetid requires sage wrist, rotted requires another thing, yada yada yada. And these add additional modifiers, so this one is a fetid. Now I think basically obviously this sort of makes the semi-bosses in the area a whole lot more difficult to deal with. And I think that's a good trade-off. You get more XP, more things. And that was a component. Now I'm actually going to have a quick cut here because Bloodborne decided it didn't want to play. What? For real, man? And we're back again. But anyway. So, your level versus the chalice level. Chalices will never take into consideration how far you are in the campaign or the story, and I suppose the only way in unlocking some of the later ones, with no spoilers alert, is through certain bosses. But you could be level 100, just finished the game, no spoiler alert, you've just gone into New Game Plus, and Depth 1 will literally be one-shotted by your fist if you play through Central again, because they're not scaled, they don't scale with your world or your level, they scale by set preset difficulty. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and on this character I'm about level 90 or 80, and this is depth 2, possibly 3. Now as you can see, I'm one-shotting most enemies and strong comboing most things down. However, another depth up, going on to depth 3, it's completely different. I'm 2 to 3 shotting and it's a big thing, so there is a difficulty jump rather than a difficulty like gradient. So, and then basically that's it. And the main thing you're going to be going after with Chalice dungeons is that you're going to be farming the normal ones for loot, and obviously just, I find it's a good way to break up the monotony of the campaign sometimes. You know, if you get a little bit bored and you want to go do something different, just go plough yourself into Chalice dungeons. I do big bursts of them. But the basic ones you want are root dungeons. The first root dungeon you get will generally be the lower or the upper central Thumeru root chalice. Now, I've not I can't remember any of this or anything like that. But basically, I always get something decent out of that dungeon. I've had a uncanny saw cleaver, an uncanny saw spear, and I think I've had an extremely rare gem. But basically, your root dungeons are the ones you want to do because they offer you good loot. Now, layout of the dungeons wise, you're always going to start in the same room, and you'll always have these passages, quote unquote, which links sections and segments of the dungeon layer together. So you'll have room, you'll spawn in a room, you'll go into your first segment. So this here, for example, is a segment. It's got different ways to go, different enemies. Now as you just see, I ran through a corridor into this segment, and that's how they're sort of broken up. It's so that you don't... I think without the corridors, the dungeons themselves would be extremely overwhelming. You'd feel as if it's an endless trek through nowhere. But often these corridors have side doors, completely optional areas to go which normally have loot. I generally find the enemies are a tad bit stronger, but that's just me. Another sort of good items along that side, so it's always advisable to do them. Type of bosses. Now, these dungeons do have their own unique bosses. Not going to drop spoilers because if this is a sort of a guide, I don't want to sort of mill people through. And that's that. So, but you will also have unique bosses and story bosses. So if you fought it in the campaign, there's a good chance you're going to be fighting it in these dungeons. However, there's going to be enemies in here you've never seen before. So, one or two times I've gone through the fog door into the next zone, and I've just sort of gone, what? What on earth is this? And I've had to learn to fight something in like a couple of steps. And you'll also see enemies in here that you've never seen on the surface neither. So, it is going to be a refreshing experience. You know, you're not going to be sort of walking through these vast, quickly sidetracked, one-way doors. You only have the access from behind the door, not in front of the door. So in this case, it's just a shortcut back to the main segment of the room. No, it's a bit of a no-frills sort of thing. But the solo objective to each dungeon layer is you've got to reach the end, hit the switch, which opens the corresponding door towards the start or any area of a dungeon, which allows you to move on to the layer boss, and then go down another layer. And you're simply working your way down. So, most of these dungeons have 3 layers, and obviously layer doesn't equate to difficulty. I think depth equates to difficulty. So the higher the depth number, so depth number 1 is the first chalice you get, and you're going to get that from the Blood-starved beast, and I find if you jump straight to that chalice, it's a strong enough challenge, but it's worth enough doing. So, but as dungeons and chalices get higher up and higher tiered, you're going to find that you're going to start getting deeper and deeper. You're going to have 4 layer, 5 layer, I don't know if it go above 5. But here you can see just behind this merciless watcher is the lever to activate this end of the level. Now, every time you hit one of these, you'll get a note which follows as such. And that is basically telling you that the door you'd have walked past earlier, which will have 2 statues on it with like mediocre green light coming from them, is now open, which will go into the next sort of passage to the next boss, which will lead to the next segment, and so on and so forth. Even though they are randomly laid out, they have somewhat of a monotonous system which bridges them apart. And this guy, he was not going to escape my ore. Get wrecked. Now I love the stake driver, for anybody who asks. Awesome weapon. But, for example, bloodstone shards, as another thing quickly on a note, you get a lot of them from these dungeons. They are literally raining them. So here's your door onto your next area. Now, side note, going down there would lead to a boss. And it will lead to a boss. As you can see here, I don't know what I'm going against. So I increase my odds by putting on the relevant 2 papers, fire and bolt. So if it's beast, fire, if it's kin, bolt, yada yada yada. So I go against people of the Old Lords. This is a Chalice boss. Basically, treat her like a hunter that uses a lot of spells. She's quick, but as you can see, bolt paper just messes her up. Now, here's one of my big issues with the dungeons, is that you can severely overlevel them. Most playthroughs never go through them because they themselves can be quite boring to watch. They're fun to do, but boring to watch. So as you saw there, I did what? I pretty much instantly nuked her down. But as you can see, defeat the boss, hit the elevator, go down to the next level, and I have my amazing flaps. Oh dear, that is a brilliant texture bug. So here's your corridor into the next area. Now sometimes these can have offshooting doors. Every single corridor like this can have those offshoots. So, but this is kind of how the dungeons roll out. Now, I think they're actually really good. I think the later ones get better. because at the moment they're kind of static. You know, they get a bit boring after a while and whatever. But once you get through these and you start getting into the root ones are the truly interesting ones, because you can't prepare yourself. You've got no idea what bosses you're going against, what enemies, what loot you're going to find. You could find that sweet uncanny version of a weapon which gives you those decent gem mix-ups so that you can actually do a really good combo. And coming up in a minute or so, you're going to see an enemy that we've never seen before, the Undead Giant. This thing is actually a boss in some parts of this dungeon, and as you can see, it's got a cannon and a cleaver. But, you know, it's never going to survive a full-on stake drive to the face. But so I suppose from this 15-minute video, you've got a very rough outline from my patchy description of how these dungeons work. They are simple enough to be replayable and fun, but complex enough to warrant a bit of thinking. It's not a brainless exercise. And another quick side note is that most dungeons have treasure rooms, generally signified by the golden and red sort of ornate door. Behind that will generally be 3 or 4 chests full of, well, anything. Mostly it's more chalice materials, but you get where I'm going with that. Now, as we're rolling up to the end of the video now, in 3 or 4 minutes remaining, I'm gonna patch out and let the rest of the video do the talking, because obviously I can't talk over much more without going into details about build or anything like that. So, oh yeah, and always check for random loot in the middle of a swamp. That would be a mimic in any other game. So, as per usual, if you like and enjoyed this content, I want you to leave a like, I want you to hit subscribe, I want you to comment, I want you to, you know, hit me up. Just let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you want to see. Do you want to see me do a speed run? I don't know. I'll do anything. I'll give those things a go. And I'm still working with GGC, Grand Girls Creations, in my local town. So I want you all to obviously do me a huge favour. Just go onto their page, look at the videos on YouTube. You know, tell them that Zyda sent you. You know, it'll do them a favour. It'll do me a favour, and it's muchly appreciated. And I couldn't ask for a little more than that. Other than that, people, I want you all to stay safe, and I want you all to tune in to my next video. See you later, hunters. Peace out.